Karloff's frustrations at being typecast as Hollywood's most evil man were soon overshadowed by a crisis in his personal life. Unknown to even their closest friends, the marriage of Boris and his wife Dorothy was on the rocks.
I don't have the faintest clue what went wrong. But at the same time, he married my stepmother the day after the divorce was final.
On April the 11th, 1946, Boris Karloff married his fifth wife, Evelyn Hope Helmore, a close friend of the family.
Evie was a very charming, very attractive, very humorous lady, and I couldn't have been more surprised. You know, this was Dorothy's best friend. It was around the house all the time, and it stunned me. Then I got used to it. And she took superb care of him, and she helped him in his work, and I think they loved each other a great deal.
During the post-war years, when movies were full of science fiction monsters, Boris returned to his first love, the stage. He gave highly acclaimed performances on Broadway in The Linden Tree, The Shop at Sly Corner, and in the role that had been his inspiration, as Captain Hook in Peter Pan. Whilst playing the arch-enemy of the little boy who wouldn't grow up, Karloff attracted a whole new generation of fans, children. Far from frightening them, Boris was becoming popular with young audiences as the friendly storyteller on many radio shows and recordings of fairy tales.
Hello there, boys and girls. Are you all ready for another story from your Uncle Boris? It's called Little Red Riding Hood. No, Sarah Jane. It is not about a red-headed hood who is taken for a ride. Shame on you for even thinking of such a thing.
Fast becoming a cultural icon, and no longer just the Hollywood monster, Karloff got rave reviews and a Tony nomination for his brilliant portrayal of Bishop Cochon, the tormentor of Joan of Arc in the 1955 Broadway production of The Lark. He was now respected amongst his peers as an actor's actor.
He had played on the stage with great distinction. He was Mr. Karloff. I mean, he was Mr. Karloff. But he was highly respected.
But Boris was not one to rest on his laurels, and despite increasing physical problems, the 64-year-old actor sought out fresh challenges in the new medium, television.
I had, in the late 50s, done a live television show with him, Playhouse 90, which was Heart of Darkness, and he played Kurtz.
I know you. Take my hand. Quickly.
And I'll never forget him because he was arthritic. He was in great pain, and he would never ever complain. And it's just very indicative of what he was like.
Aye, my jungle, my earth, my son.
Based on the novel by his favourite author, Joseph Conrad, Karloff's portrayal of the mad jungle leader was unsurpassed until Marlon Brando's interpretation of the role more than 20 years later in Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse Now.
Horror. The horror.
While Boris was surprising television viewers with the excellence of his many performances, it wasn't long before television played a big surprise on him.
Our honored guest, whom we're about to surprise tonight, is known to all of you as one of the truly great and beloved stars of the theater, motion pictures, radio, and television. Pan the camera quickly, please. He's not coming through those doors because he's seated right there innocently. Tonight, this is your life, Boris Karloff.
He had a moment when they turned the cameras on him, and he, in fact, realized that this was his life.
Boris, I think we really put the... Oh, my.
I think my father was horrified.
Hiya, Boris.
He was committed to his privacy.
What do you remember about Boris at the Majestic Theater back in 1919 and 20, Jim?
I can still see Boris sitting in the dressing room hour after hour, working with grease paint, nose putty, crepe hair, and wigs, trying to perfect the art of changing his appearance.
Anything to cover myself up, in other words.
He didn't talk about himself. He hated it. He hated prying into his past. Absolutely hated it. He was very shy and very quiet.
While waiting for that first acting job, how did you make a living?
Well, I cleared land, shoveled coal, laid streetcar tracks, did all sorts of things.
My father never complained about anything. Consequently, had he talked about the difficult periods in his life, I think to him it would have been grousing.
The director of the workshop in Anchorage, Alaska, Frank Brink.
He had a lot of inner pride, but he was not a boastful man.
From the very beginning, Boris became part of the group. Not a star, mind you, Ralph, but just one of us. And when he found out that we were trying to raise the funds, I'm going to tell it because it needs to be told. When he discovered we were trying to raise the funds to build our own theater, he turned over every penny of his percentage of the profits to our building fund.
I know he was genuinely pleased to see Jack Pierce.
Wonderful to see.
The best makeup man in the world.
Thank you.
I owe him a lot.
This Is Your Life really did a marvelous job in pulling together some special people in my father's life.
From San Francisco, your daughter, Sarah Jane.
But avoiding the past would get even harder for Boris Karloff. Universal Pictures had begun to show their classic monster movies on television in a series called Shock Theatre.
It's alive!
The popularity of Shock Theatre created a monster craze unlike anything seen before. There were late-night horror hosts like Vampira. Bobby Boris Pickett recorded a hit single called Monster Mash. Aurora Plastics produced do-it-yourself monster model kits, and a magazine called Famous Monsters of Filmland became tremendously popular.
Kids were seeing a number of monster movies, and that was whetting their appetite. So I created the world's first film monster magazine to show them the artistry of Karloff, or what the man behind the image was really like.
Boris Karloff, king of monsters.
Now in his 70s and more in demand than ever, Karloff was indeed a king.
Let's get you some eyes.
He appeared in everything from horror films like Frankenstein 1970, filmed in 1958, to a weekly television suspense series.
Other screams will soon be heard. Whose? Perhaps yours.
Boris also showed his lighter side on numerous TV variety shows.
I'm very happy to welcome our special guest, Mr. Boris Karloff.
Boris Karloff was a guest star when I was just starting out, and we did a sketch together. I think I was a librarian or something. He was just a mild-mannered man who came in to borrow a book, and of course he scared the hell out of me.
I really wish you wouldn't do that. It frightens me.
And he was very, very unscary in person.
You're making the mistake of mixing me up with the parts that I play in films. In real life, my great interest is in gardening. Why, only today I planted a new flower bed.
Who's under it?
He knew that he was typecast. He made friends with the monster. He always thought he was lucky to be working.
In 1962, Karloff put on the Frankenstein monster's costume and makeup one last time to appear with fellow horror stars Peter Lorre and Lon Chaney Jr. in a Halloween episode of the TV series Route 66.